There we go. Hello, everyone. So now I do my official intro. So I see so many new people here today, which is amazing because usually I have quite a select, a lot of people. So I will introduce myself properly. So my name's Emma. I am a kinesiologist with a Bachelor of Health Science, a practitioner for the last 17 years this year. So I have made the transition into work and study into clinic a few times now, having set up for 7 years, like taken 7 years to get myself officially set up. And then I pretty much, a few years later, switched it all around and started up in a completely new place. So I know exactly how hard it is to get going. And I started I started my therapy before the internet was really big and social media was a thing and all that kind of stuff. So coming into it and like earlier or later and having this bombardment of social media and comparisonitis and all of that kind of stuff as well is just huge. And it's another reason why. So I started the prac table about 5 years ago now. And basically just started it because I had had so many people along the way who had wanted to make the transition but just never really could get going on it. And I think when you look back on most of the classes, not even just in kinesiology, but in naturopathy, nutrition, massage, chiros, acupuncture, whoever I spoke to, I would ask, how many of you are still practicing? And it would be a really select few. And for me, that just really sucks because it's how many more practitioners could there be out there, if this transition was just a little bit easier, because you graduate and then you come out completely on your own, feeling so overwhelmed, not just by, not just by the clients that you have to see and pretend that you know all of this stuff too, and you're having to guide them. And that's in itself such an overwhelming feeling. But now you're meant to have like a master's in business at the same time. And you're on social media with all these coaches, and God love them, they're great, but there's so many coaches teaching coaches how to coach, right? And they're all, when you look at their business model, they're all earning a gazillion dollars because they're teaching coaches how to coach other coaches. Like it's this whole network marketing industry. And then, you know, like that we've got all these practitioners that come out, and our spaces are actually much less about marketing and much more personal to personal. And it's not just, um, it's not just putting ourselves out there and marketing, it's actually holding space for people in their really vulnerable states in clinic. And when you have that responsibility, on your hands, it's actually can be really tough. And that the reality is that there's just not a lot of support out there to help you through it. So that's why I've set up the prac table, and that's why I'm here, and I'm on a new mission. So I've been in these four walls now for 17 years, and I've heard literally thousands and thousands and thousands of stories of humans, and kind of figured out we're all the same. So I'm here to kind of break down all the bullshit. And I'm not one to give you, these are the steps to do it. I'm much more about the human. And Iris, you're asking if it's suitable for people not finished studying. Absolutely, absolutely. Um, Look, I've had mentoring clients who have just been start and stop in their businesses for over a decade, right? And um I'm going to say this to you because I bet it's not just like I bet you're blaming yourself, and I bet you're blaming your own emotions and things like that. But I think reality is that we've got families, we've got financial responsibilities, we've got real life, that gets in the way, and we could really cut everyone off, put our asses into work, and burn ourselves and our families and our relationships out, and you'd be really fucking successful, right? You'd be killing it. I worked on the northern beaches of Sydney for most of my career so far, so 10, 12 years. And I've seen how that's gone over and over and over and over and over again, because that is that survival mechanism of, of that whole Sydney side. And it does not bode well. You can absolutely burn yourself out building. And even on a practitioner space, if you're seeing a lot of new clients every day because you're building up your database, it's actually really emotionally draining and mentally draining. So when you see a new client, it's a very different energy to one that you've seen years down the track. So if you're in a space where you're building, you're generally seeing, 2, 3 new clients maybe a week, or you've seen them only for a couple of months. You're still building that relationship, and you're building your own, what I call like your internal database. So how people respond to things, what your way of treating is, how you see this pattern play out. You're practicing along the way, right? And so that takes a lot of internal emotion and energy and thought. And so if you're seeing, if you're expecting yourself to see 7 new or newish clients a week, it's very quick way to burn yourself out, I think. The general rule of thumb is, and it tends to happen organically, is that therapists will see about 3 clients a week for their first year or 2. And then they'll see, and then they'll up that and they'll see 6 clients and then, 12 clients and all that kind of thing. So I'm not saying that has to be your way. I'm just saying that that's actually just naturally what happens a lot of the time. And if you are seeing more than that, then you have to be aware that that's probably taking a lot of your energy. And you need a lot more self-care in there, or you need a lot more emotional processing probably, because you're meeting people in really vulnerable, hard spaces most of the time. And hands up, who's a naturopath, or is anyone here a naturopath? Or how many here are kinesiologists? Yeah, I tend to attract a lot of kins. So without slamming the industry, like I think naturopaths are fantastic, but I do see a lot of frustration and anger and tension in the industry, because I think that they get burnt out by seeing a lot of people really quickly. And then they have this like expectation on their clients, to be following their protocol and doing the right thing and all of that kind of stuff. It's like, I don't know, it's a whole different energy to, and because most of us as kins, I'll kind of relate it back to that. I just never know who I'm going to get in, but if most of us are kins, as kins, we could get someone coming in and they need a change of diet, or they, need to just relax a little bit more or something. Or within that session, we could get a major trauma download. But we have to be prepared every hour for whatever comes through the door. And so we have to respect that actually, it takes a lot from us. And it can take a lot of getting used to. And that emotional resilience, being able to bounce back, that's really what makes this transition from work to study really hard. Because again, we're doing that resilience bounce back a lot of the time on our own. And you're in that space, and we're in that space with the client, and you feel amazing, and you feel like I'm flowing, and then you walk out of the room and all of the self-doubt comes up to the surface. And you go, oh shit, I, based off what we've been taught, I haven't done that. I needed to do that. I didn't look at that, blah, 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 blah. And as a student, no matter what modality you've studied, you're given like a scaffolding, right? I call it a scaffolding, like a way of working and I call it a scaffolding because it's meant to be temporary as you build your internal way of working. but you have to somewhere along the line give yourself permission to take down the scaffolding and make your practice your own. And if you're fighting, if you feel like you're exiting sessions full of self-doubt, but you felt good in them, then it's probably that you're trying to work the way that you were taught. But you find yourself flowing your own way. And then you come out and you go, shit, I should have done all of that. The beautiful thing about being a kinesiologist and about a therapist is that, part of it is that we're on our own and that we don't have to do it anyway. And no one really knows what kinesiology is anyway. So we kind of get to work however we want. But the ironic thing is that we all end up working the same way. It's this really weird kind of thing where if you're following the body and the natural healing process, we all end up working the same way. It's probably just not what you were taught. And there's very much a kinesiology modality where it's very procedure based. But I find that when you're actually working with human beings and their trauma and things like that, you've got to step away from the procedure because there's a human being on the table who feels really vulnerable in that moment. And they need you to step back and be with them. But I think that, emotionally, that's a big part of what makes that transition hardest, because if you're doing that and you're not communicating with any colleagues or anyone else out there, then that feels really unnatural and leaves a lot of space for self-doubt. And so you're constantly trying to push yourself into this way of working and being that doesn't feel natural to you anymore. And, again, that's just going to hold back your energy flow, really, when you look at it in an energetic point of view. You being able to flow with that self-confidence, right? If we really want to transition from work to study into clinic, we need a lot of self-confidence. I was really lucky. I'm like a Aries, and I was young and dumb enough to just go gung-ho into things. I don't know if I'd have the confidence to do that these days, like motherhood kind of breaks you down a bit, right? And life kind of breaks you down a few pegs. So, I had a lot more self-confidence back then, I think, than I have a lot of more wisdom and love for myself now. But the self-confidence is a little bit more shaky now that life has been experienced. So, understanding that, okay, self-confidence comes from mostly learning, and that understanding and that connection. We need connection in order to have confidence, I think. And if you're trying to deal and process all of this on your own, and build up your business and build up your confidence in clinic and do it a certain way, like it's going to take you a long time to build, because that's a really hard way of doing things. Does that make sense? Has anyone got any questions or comments or anything so far for me? No. So how do we transition from work to study? Well, one, we need connection with people. And two, we need self-belief and to find our own way of working. So no matter what modality you're listening and you're doing this, you need to find your own way of working. And you need to let that feel natural. And if you're unsure about it, talk to someone about it. Or try and find your own theory behind it as well, without having that pressure of doing things the way that you were taught. Again, a lot of teachers, they're great, of course, but you have to really look at your teachers and go, have they really worked with the general public a lot, for years? Because again, so many teachers just haven't, and so they're not teaching from a space of real life experience. They're teaching, based off how they were taught, which is fair enough. But, I think, again, we need to kind of break down all of the perceptions of how things are and how things have been, have a look at the real life picture behind things. And then, how many teachers are just seeing other students in clinic as well, and things like that. That's kind of the reality of the industry, is that we, often, because there's so many people that haven't been successful in the industry, the people that we're looking to for guidance, there's actually not that many. Does that make sense? And then we need to look at, okay, well, how did they become successful, and what's their reality story and all that kind of stuff? Because again, that comparison game, when you look at, I started, when I had my first baby, so my oldest is 10 years old. So when I first had my, was it him? No, it was my second one. So about 7 years ago, the blogging industry went bam, big, right in the middle of my maternity leave. And then I came online and I was like, oh shit, I'm meant to be online now. And I'm meant to be doing all of this stuff and sharing this stuff. And I saw all of these things where all of these people had, look, I'll just tell the whole story. So, all of the spiritual blogging industry went bang at that time. And they were making huge amounts of money out of their practice. And here I am trying to support my little family off my clinic, and I was doing great, but then it was burnout season as well. And, obviously you've seeing people in clinic and trying to support a family is very reliant on those one-on-one clients and the energy that goes into. So, I'm comparing myself to people who are making these huge amounts of profit, not seeing people. And then it took me a couple of months of really going down this whole imposter syndrome road to go, oh, these people don't have kids. And these people, have a background in marketing, and these people aren't actually seeing clients in clinic one-on-one. They're not trained professionals. They've done a few coaching courses, that kind of thing. So I was like, oh, okay, took myself out of that story. And then ironically, you see that industry burn itself out in a year or two, and they're all selling essential oils now. So it's like, and that's like, that's actually the reality of it, right? These people that are these huge amounts of people, they're all in network marketing now. So again, are you comparing apples to apples when you're trying to transition yourself? Again, that comes back to the self-confidence bit, because we can hesitate and hesitate and hesitate and hesitate based off our own self-confidence. And then the reality is that we need to market ourselves in order to grow your business. But most of us didn't get into this industry to market ourselves. Like, it was kind of like an oopsie, like at the end of it, right? Like, I forgot. So again, it's a whole other skill to learn just while you're trying to get used to this other skill. And so my biggest tips for pracs coming out and trying to market themselves is, you don't have to start with social media. Our industry is actually within our community. And when we're comparing ourselves to marketing on social media, that's actually a really broad platform. You're looking at people who aren't going to come and see you most of the time because they're too far away, unless you're working online, and that's a different story. But I think, when you start, it's really nice to get used to people one-on-one, because that is our industry. That's where our service is most needed. And I'm a big advocate for getting back into our grassroots that way. But if you're online, then yes, social media. But if you're community-based, then start your marketing community-based. Start by getting to know other practitioners in the area. Start by going to business networking things in the area. That's something that's really confronting, but what you start to realize is that every business owner is the same. And you actually build up this really beautiful friendship network with other business owners in the area. And that will really help you tune into what spaces are needed, what, where there's lacking in healthcare and mental health in your area. You keep tapped into what's going on with the schools, what's going on with work, what's going on with development, what's going on in your community, right? And all of those things give you inspiration. And the moment you have inspiration, the self-doubt goes. And once you have inspiration, then there's fire and you actually can push yourself. Because the reality is that you do need a lot of push in those early stages. And I think the self-helpy kind of industry, which we're part of, but the self-helpy industry has this big thing about self-care, 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 don't burn out, don't burn out, don't burn out, which is great. But you actually do need a little bit of yang energy to begin with. So it does, like, there'll be periods where you're working at night and where you're pushing yourself and you have to put relationships to the side, but always be conscious of it and make sure it's a cycle, and that, okay, I'm going to do this weekend, but then next weekend I'm going to give myself off. Like, don't let it be a major pattern. Whenever I'm launching a course, for instance, I will go through maybe 5-6 weeks of really hard work. But then, you know what, I've got this course then that I can just bring out year after year, and it becomes easier. But everything that you see has had a big push behind it. And every business needs a big push. I very much relate it to parenthood. So that was the kind of the best, if you've listened to my podcast, like, that's the best business advice I ever got from a broker, right? Again, at one of these business networking things. And he was talking about how, business is like parenthood. And it is. When you first launch, up all night, you've got, you put yourself aside for like a year and then you push it, you have to rediscover a new version of yourself, and all of your energy goes into this thing that isn't really doing a lot for itself yet, and then eventually, like, it starts giving back little bits by little bits by little bits until it does get a flow on, right? And it does start to walk and talk and have its own life and all that kind of stuff. And then it gets to teenagehood, and you have to change the way that you do everything. And you'll see that in people's businesses, like in that end of the first or the second year, they'll do a rebrand. And then at teenagehood, they'll take things, they'll start a whole new version of their business. Like, that's what I did 5 years ago. So my business would have been about 12 years old, right? So you hit that teenagehood and you're like, all right, time for a new version of myself and things and evolution. So just like you'd never push the journey of parenthood, you can't push the journey of your business. It is just going to be what it is. And so really take that shame away from how long it's taking you. Because it just is, like, it's a balancing life, and it's got to integrate with your life and who you are and your confidence and everything else. And I think I spent so many years getting frustrated because I wanted this thing to grow too fast, too early. And now I look back, I'm so grateful I took it slow, because I had that integration time and I had that slow burn, and that relationship really built with the clients that I did have. I saw them for years and years and years. Some of my earliest clients, they are still now contacting me, they're like 17 years later. And particularly the kids, I've seen them grow up through their whole life, and I've been that person that they come back to over and over and over again. And I can't tell you how amazing that is. And also what that does for your word of mouth in the community, having those, if you're somebody's go-to, it's incredible. That's such a big, I guess, it gives me so much more reason to be here and dealing with the hard stuff as well. But if I was forcing myself to be too busy, the reality is that you get in your head and you just end up doing without really kind of having that integration time in between. And so if it's taking you a long time and you're frustrated with yourself, try and just take a deep breath and really value like where you've come from already, what you have done already, the relationships you are establishing. Take the pressure off a little bit, it will take time. Financially support yourself in a different way, until it does grow, and it will grow. Like if you keep at it, it will grow. But if you are constantly in this back and forth stage where you're beating yourself up and you're going into self-doubt and stuff, it'll take longer. And you'll have times where you'll have to give it up because it's become too much and things like that. But if you're really gentle with yourself, it'll grow. But my biggest step is do your marketing in the way that feels really comfortable to you at first. Because the more that you talk about it, the more confident that you become in your own messaging, the way that you talk about, you learn things along the way. And at first, I had no idea how to explain what I do. No idea. I felt so uncomfortable every time someone asked me what I did, And so again, being young and a bit gung-ho, throwing myself into network marketing, business marketing, I'd have to get up. I committed myself I'd do it 2 or 3 times a week sometimes. And I'd get up at 7 a.m. in the morning, go to a meeting. Again, I didn't have kids then, right? So don't compare yourself to me if you're not doing that. But, I'd get up in the morning, I'd go to these meetings and I'd stand up in front of everyone and try and have to explain what I did in a minute. So in the end, I got really good at explaining what I did in a minute. So the way I describe what I do is I'm a natural therapist that helps with stress mentally and physically. Really kind of trying to keep it simple. The moment you start talking about muscle testing, people zone, right? Don't talk about muscle testing. You don't talk about biofeedback and all that kind of stuff, right? No one cares how they print the stuff. They just print it, right? Or no one cares about the workings behind the scenes. They just care about what it actually does. So the big thing is that recognizing that whenever you do something, you're going to be entering in a self-doubt period. So even like I've been running the apprenticeship, which is my membership now for 5 years, but I'm redoing it and I'm relaunching it. And even last night I was, it's this weird phenomenon that happens where you go to launch something and then all of a sudden you see 5 other people who've done it better than you, right? It's like, oh, come on, again. So every time I've launched something, the universe has done exactly that. So you become aware of the pattern eventually, and you don't go into a self spiral so much. But I even, said to my partner, oh, going through and I'm aware now, like I'm going through massive self-doubt about this. Am I really good enough for this now? Am I going to be able to do this? And then, I go, okay, it's just because I'm doing something new. It's because I'm exposing myself in a new way, right? So in the past, I'd get to that point and I'd shut down and I'd stop and I would maybe go through months of therapy, or I would go, go and find something else to focus my energy on and all that kind of stuff. But now I kind of see it and I go, cool, I'm about to enter in a new phase. And so I see the self-doubt, I take a deep breath and I say, okay, I'm going through a comfort zone. So how you do the next stage is really up to you and where you're at. But my way is just keep going and pushing forward until I feel comfortable. But I'm also a big advocate for finding something to make that uncomfortable zone comfortable. So for instance, if you're pushing into, a second day of clinic, but you're getting into this big self-doubt version of, am I going to be able to afford it? Am I going to be able to sustain it? Make it comfortable. Talk to your clinic owner about doing a commission rent on the second day, or find someone to help you out, with the rent, or start putting people on packages or something like that, so ask yourself, what do I need to do to make this comfortable? Or do I just need to let myself go through this self-doubt, uncomfortable version, because the self-doubt comes in because it's your nervous system's way of trying to protect you from being too exposed. So self-doubt's really beautiful because it steps us out of that tribe. So we've stepped out of the tribe and we've gone, all right, I'm doing things differently. And the self-doubt comes in and says, are we really sure we want to do this? Now, how you respond to that, are we sure, really depends on your own self-talk. But what most people do is go, oh yeah, actually you're right, like that. Yeah, no, not good enough at all. Look at all these reasons that's absolutely right. But once you see it as a nervous system response, you go, oh, thank you very much for protecting me. Cool, we got this. All right, let's maybe talk about it with a friend, or let's, have a couple of days to digest things, or let's, whatever you need to do to make it comfortable, you can, because you're just seeing it as a nervous system response. But if you let yourself go into the emotional spiral, it's really going to fuck you up. Just to be really frank about it, like it's really going to screw with your head about what you can and can't do. So if you're having self-doubt, it's a good sign that you're extending your comfort zone. And it's okay. It's safe. It's going to come up. It's going to be full of bullshit. And you take a deep breath and move on. But if you let it become a story, then you're going to, isolate yourself. And it's going to be really hard. And I think as kinesiologists, if most of you are, we really go into, oh, well, I need to break all these belief patterns then. It's like we can spend our whole life blaming ourselves and beliefs and all that kind of stuff. The other thing I will mention is that just like parenthood, your business is going to have its own personality and its own vibe. And sometimes we can do all of the things and it's going to revolt in its own way. So sometimes we just have to go with the flow with what is going on in our business at the time. And if it's not ready, if we're not ready, then it's going to take its time. So that's okay. But probably what it needs is a bit more encouragement and love and attention with it, not frustration and tension. If we start hating it for not moving, it's not really going to move anywhere. But if we see that it really just needs a little bit of love and we need a little bit of love, then it gets a lot easier. How are we going, everybody? Yeah? Okay. Has anyone got any questions or anything that they actually like a burning, like how to, I'm in this position and I really need some help with that next phase right now? No? That's all right.
I do, Emma.
Hey,
Hey,
Laura.
Laura. Hey. Um, just in like crafting a really quick offer. Like, so for example, yeah, putting out my services like properly, not just sort of word of mouth, but yeah, not wanting to make a big deal about it, just sort of through social media. Yeah, the best way in sort of, yeah, just being like, this is my availability, and this is what the offer is. Like, for example, a one session or a 3-pack. Yeah, what would you recommend?
My
I reckon.
oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm just gonna put
Just
you.
gonna put you.
There you go. Sorry, bit of feedback. My one recommendation is that therapists don't discount. People who do treatments do, but if somebody is actually really wanting to take responsibility, then the last thing they need is you to put them in a vulnerable position and then them feel like they owe you something at the end of it, or they've been given a cheap version or given a you know, a discount has this energy to it which is incomplete. So really by giving that responsibility back to the client, there's a real energetic closure of, all right, thank you very much. You've made me vulnerable, but I'm taking responsibility back and I'm exiting. And that might sound really weird, but you go discount and tell me how that experience was for you, because if it works for you, great. But my experience over all these years and watching it over and over again is that people who come in on a discount aren't really ready yet. They've jumped on it because it's a discount. And they haven't really made that decision within themselves that I am ready for this. And so their ability to come back after the discount doesn't really work. What I will do for people who are in financially sticky, you know, like single mums or disabilities or something like that, they'll pay for their first session, and then I have a set price in my head. So I've become very aware of what I need to cover my expenses per hour or per session. And then I won't discount past that point. So one, make sure that, but what you're asking is, how do I promote that first little bit? Just saying I'm here on these days, book in, you know, and then come back to what they're coming in for. Rather, so with marketing, we can often get stuck in what we're offering, you know, and trying to best promote what we're offering. But we actually, our first rule of thumb with marketing is, how do we make someone feel safe with us? So what do they need? They have a problem, but they just don't know who's there to solve it yet. They don't know who is right for them at the moment. So what you're really teaching them is why they're right, why you're right for that problem. So come back to using your post to educate people on the way things are connected. So did you know that, you know, little things like, when you're stressed, it can affect your back, but when you're, you know, the great thing about what we do is that we're the person that people come to see when nobody else can help. So I always come back to that in my marketing as well. Like, well, who else works with a back issue, but then talks about the emotion and the back issue at the same time? You know, so if you're overwhelmed, I'm your person. And then you need to put yourself out there as someone who they can trust to come and be vulnerable with and open with. So I always began my marketing with just sharing experiences of the human journey. So, you know, simple kind of like, when we're angry, that can kind of come from a place of self-protection, or it can come from a place of suppressed emotions. You know, so, you know, when you have a, you know, and rather than saying my space is the best, blah, 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 I just say something along the lines of, when you have a safe place to open to and express these things, then it doesn't need to come out to your loved ones. It can be processed in that safe place. Does that give you some ideas? Yeah. So put it out there as I'm available on these days, or I have availabilities on these days, but leave the price and the discount out of it. If you have packages, I have known people who might give like a 20% discount over like 3 packages or something. So it's really small, but it's, you know, just enough to kind of get them across the line. But if you want, my assumption with my clients is that once you're in, you're in. I'm not going anywhere, you're not going anywhere. They're not trapped, but I'm on that understanding that life unravels, and you know what? Like, I'm that unique person that gets to do it all with you. So the one thing I see lots of practitioners getting stuck with is the 3-session mark. So again, you know, repeat clients are a lot easier to fill your books up with than new ones. If you're constantly seeking new clients all the time, then it's a lot of energy for you. But if you're just rebooking people, it's a lot easier. And it's, you know, you're doing it in a way which is like, I'm actually here to support you through your life. And if you, at the end of a session, if you go, do you want to book in 4 or 6 weeks? Then you're going to really know with people, okay, yeah, they're booking 4 weeks, they want to come sooner, or book 6 weeks, or they might even say, I'll call you, you know. But if they're dragging it out, then you know, okay, it's they could probably go. But if they want to come in sooner, then you know that they need that more support. You have to rebook your clients because that duty of care is that we've unraveled them and picked them back up within a session. And then we spit them out into the real life world and they need to go practice that, deal with that. And if you haven't rebooked them, then it's your way of saying, well, I've fixed you, see you later. Whereas in reality, they're going, this is new, I need to practice this, it's triggering up new stuff and I need to come back in. And then about third session, the main issue is kind of resolved, but have you really dealt with the underlying stuff? Or have you really dealt with how this then changes your life? And, again, that's really important. No matter what industry you're in, you have to see people more than 3 times in order to have a really consistent business. How's it? I feel like with that information, you've all kind of shut down a little bit. Does anyone have any questions or comments about that? As a practitioner, it's actually like that's our vulnerable space, right? It tends to be after that 3 sessions, we walk in and we go, I don't know what to do now. So start back at the beginning, start back and go, okay, well, tell me about what you haven't told me about. What relationship haven't you spoken about? What is actually coming back to your sleep is a really good one. How's your sleep going? Or how's your hormones going? Or how's your bowels going? And you come back to a whole, you can take a completely new tangent. Yeah, rebooking is challenging, but it's in everyone's best interest. Hey, Alison, what can I help you with? Hello.
Just going back to that question about discounting.
Yeah.
I'm not graduated yet, but I've done classes and I'm trying to finish getting practice hours up. What do you suggest? Do you still suggest not discounting in terms of just starting out and just trying to get clients, but at the same time fulfill hours?
Connect with other practitioners and offer your services to other practitioners. 1, it's safe because they've been where you are.
Okay.
And 2, it's a really beautiful way to build up your reputation and build up your word of mouth is by connecting with other practitioners. 3, it builds your own connection in your community as far as being able to barter sessions, being able to feel supported,
Okay.
understanding you're not alone, being able to refer on and have that word of mouth with other practitioners. So that's my number 1 big tip. If you're trying to get clients into practice on, ask other practitioners in the area.
Okay.
Which is nerve-wracking, but they're humans. Therapists have feelings too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. In that case, though, what would you charge then with another practitioner? Like an exchange or a
do an exchange. Yeah. Or you can charge them a small amount, but you just offer it as a student practice. Yeah. And other new practitioners in the area too, have a look, do a little quick Instagram view and see who has, who's newish in the area. So just, or do a quick Google search and see who's in your area. Yeah. Finding other practitioners to connect to, I think, is really, really important. Again, it's out of our comfort zone. It might trigger your self-doubt, but when you've had a crazy week or you know, client that just really hit you, it's so comforting just to be able to call that friend. So I had a really tough one today. Or what's been coming into your clinic lately? Has it been this, you know, like it's, and you really support each other, you know, and they need it too. Being a therapist can be really isolating at times. Yeah. Being the therapist at a party is hard. Yeah. So yes, and making sure that you have that connection. So they're my big tips, guys. So 1, self-doubt is just protection. So see it as that. Don't believe everything that it says and keep going. Find people to connect to and build in your community first before you try and, you know, feel like it's exiting your comfort zone enough to be a practitioner, let alone being an expert at all the reels and stuff off the bat as well. So do the basics. Don't worry too much about building that. You know, do one thing at a time. And it'll take time. Give yourself permission for it to take time, but it will happen. Stop beating yourself up if it's not happening fast enough. Just notice that, okay, I'm probably just learning and building my confidence up. And I'm here for it. You know, I'm so here for it. So just reach out anytime. All right. Thanks, guys. Do we have any questions before I leave you? No. No, thank you so much. So join us on the Facebook page, the Instagram page. I've got the apprenticeship again relaunching soon. So watch out for that. But yeah, contact me, email me, whatever you want to do. It's all going to be okay. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.